Why do so many patients relapse? It's not always out of basic craving. It's not from lack of willpower. It's not choice, but it's often something quieter, something more unsettling. They stop feeling joy. They stop feeling motivation, even relief. And the culprit is not just past trauma or triggers. It's something deeper. It's how their brains are no longer recognizing healthy rewards. I'm Dr. Arwen Podesta, psychiatrist, addiction medicine specialist, founder of Podesta Wellness. In this video, I'm going to show you how to decode dopamine so you can help patients rebuild their reward system and actually want to stay in recovery. Imagine this. Your patient is weeks into sobriety. They've done everything right. They've detoxed. They've gotten onto good medication regimen. They're on supplements. They've attended therapy. They're working out. They're following the plan. But when they walk on a sunny day, when they see their child laugh, or they finish a workout, nothing. They have no spark. They feel no lift, just a dull, flat echo of what should feel good. And it's not depression exactly, and it's not resistance. It's actually a nervous system that's been rewired for extremes, for chaos, not calm. The very brain that was using substances is then trained to respond only to massive synthetic dopamine surges. Everything else feels muted. And this is where so many relapses occur, not from craving alone, but from the unbearable absence of joy. Because here's the deeper truth. In recovery, the problem isn't just stopping the substance, it's actually learning to feel again, to want again, to believe that healthy pleasure is possible and worth the wait. And if we, as physicians, as clinicians, if we miss this step, we risk confusing survival with success. If you're building a clinical approach that's both evidence-based and humanistic, download my free professional's guide to addiction treatment. The link's below in the description. A few years ago, I worked with a patient named Daniel. Early 30s, former high performer in finance, 6 weeks sober after years of stimulant use. He had structure, he had support, he had great insight, and we had an excellent medication and supplement regimen to balance out his chemistry. But in one session, he looked at me and he said, "Dr. Podesta, I just don't feel alive. I'm just going through the motions. I journal, I exercise, I do what I'm told, but nothing feels worth it. It's like I'm watching my life from behind a glass." And that's when it clicked. His brain wasn't craving the drug anymore. It was craving meaningful dopamine. And it didn't know where or how to find it anymore. No amount of abstinence alone could fix that. What he needed wasn't just sobriety. It was a new relationship with pleasure, one that felt human, not hijacked. That moment reframed everything for me. Because when a patient says, "I'm sober, but I'm empty," they're not failing. They're telling us where the work really needs to begin. So what is that emptiness? So why does someone like Daniel, stable, committed, insightful, still feel hollow inside? It's not weakness. It's not resistance. It's basic biology, because addiction doesn't just distort behavior. It rewires the reward system at the root. And recovery asks the brain to relearn what joy and pleasure feels like without the shortcuts. That's where dopamine comes in. Not just as a pleasure chemical like pop psychology would have us believe, but as a motivational compass, guiding attention, guiding curiosity, guiding drive, even guiding purpose. If we want patients to stay in recovery, we can't just remove this substance. We actually have to retrain the entire reward system so that it can notice again, so that it can want again, so that it can care again. All right, so let's look how that system works and how we can really help it heal. To understand recovery at the dopamine level, we need to look at what addiction actually does to the brain's reward system. The oversimplified map is this. The ventral tegmentum acts like a dopamine ignition switch. It's where dopamine is stored. It is then firing dopamine towards the nucleus accumbens when you get a pleasure hit. The nucleus accumbens is the pleasure center. And so then you get a surge of motivation, do it again, a go get it signal. In a healthy brain, the system responds to things like connection, movement, music, and purpose. But in addiction, that circuit gets hijacked, trained to light up only for unnatural high-intensity stimuli. And over time, the baseline drops. And natural rewards, like a walk in the sun, eating a good meal, having a heartfelt conversation. They barely register, not because they don't matter, because they don't hit hard enough. And this is why patients in recovery, particularly early recovery, feel numb. They say, I don't feel joy. And it's not that their receptors are broken, it's that their receptors have been desensitized. But here's the encouraging part. Dopamine systems are plastic, which means they can be retrained, and not by force, but through small, repeated exposures to real-world reinforcers. And contrary to the trendy advice online, you don't need a dopamine fast. You need dopamine recalibration, novelty, purpose, skill building. These are slow burn sources of dopamine that help the brain reawaken to life, reawaken to meaning, reawaken to wanting again. So now that we understand the architecture, the hijacked circuitry, the desensitized receptors, the myth about dopamine fasting, the real question becomes, what do we do with it? How do we help patients not just understand their neurobiology, but work with it? Because this is where the shift happens, not in theory, but in actual practice. In the everyday rhythms of how patients move, how they connect, how they create, and how they reflect. This is where dopamine becomes a tool for healing, not a trap for relapse. All right, so I want to get specific with you. But before that, I want to share something personal. Creating these videos has actually been a dream of mine. For me, they're not just content. I view them as capacity building, as life-changing support for addiction professionals like you. And it would mean the world if you liked, subscribed, and commented below. And for doing that, I'm going to do my very best to respond to every comment. Now, here are the 4 steps I use with patients to help rewire their reward systems gently, approachably, sustainably, and in a way that actually feels good. Step 1, normalize the neurobiology. Start by telling the patient what you're feeling isn't failure, it's physiological. And this shift simply reframes the shame that they may feel and builds trust. And when a patient realizes that their flatness has a name and a map, they lean in. 2, introduce micro-reinforcers. What used to light you up? What used to bring you joy, even just a little bit? Then bring that back slowly. It could be music, nature, movement, laughter, family. One patient began each day by watching dog videos. That little teeny lift, enough to start rebuilding the positive circuitry. Don't push the fireworks, just help them find a flicker. Build novelty and skill. Okay, here's the secret. Dopamine loves progress. So when we shift from passive pleasure to active engagement, creative hobbies, volunteering, learning something new, these create sustainable dopamine without overloading it. I might say, you don't need to feel amazing. You just need to feel. You need to feel alive. And that's a critical distinction in recovery. Step 4, make it visible. Dopamine thrives on feedback, so give them a way to see their momentum. This is neurofeedback. Give them a mood tracker. Have them do a habit chart, even sticky notes on a mirror, even taking videos and sending to themselves. It turns progress into proof, and that builds belief. These steps aren't flashy, they're not viral, but they're how we rewire a reward system that was built on intensity, on the drug, and rebuild it around meaning. So what did all of this teach us? When a patient says, I'm sober, I'm abstinent, but I still just don't feel like myself, they're not being dramatic. They're naming the truth of early recovery. The absence of chaos isn't the presence of joy. And this right here is where your work as a clinician becomes transformative. Because when we help patients understand their dopamine system not as broken, but as retrainable, we give them back something that substances once stole, the ability to feel again, not just sober, not just abstinence, not just functional, but connected, curious, alive. Now, let's pull that all together. Recovery isn't just about what we remove, about removing the substance. It's about what we help patients rediscover. Dopamine doesn't need to be suppressed. We don't need to fast our dopamine. It needs to be redirected towards purpose, towards progress, towards real earned pleasure. When you understand the neuroscience behind motivation and meaning, you're not just treating addiction, you're helping rewire a life, rewire a family. And that changes everything. Not just for your patient's recovery, but for how they move forward, feeling alive. Even when dopamine is healing, relapse can still creep in quietly, invisibly. And many professionals miss the signs. until it's too late. Click right here. This is where we'll unpack the hidden driver of relapse most people miss and what you can do to stop it. Because recovery isn't just possible. With the right rewiring and the right awareness, it becomes deeply sustainable.